Well, if hybrid work is here to stay, how do we create the right hybrid culture? Well, my guest today is Carolyn Byers. She is HR lead for Microsoft Canada. She joins me now to talk about her experience managing hybrid work through the pandemic and also about what she thinks should come next. Hi, Carolyn.
Hi, Linda. It's a pleasure to be here with you today, and thank you for inviting me.
Oh, well, it's great to have this conversation. I have a lot of questions about hybrid work, but I always like to talk about how people ended up doing what they're doing, their own backgrounds, that they're bringing to the table. If you have a minute to tell us about that.
Oh, for sure. I actually went to the University of Guelph and studied psychology. And when I graduated, I'm going to be honest, I had no idea what I was going to do when I grew up. At the time, I was saying, well, what could I do where I could take my learnings from university and really apply them practically? And I ended up learning about the postgraduate program at Seneca for HR, for those interested in the HR field. So I actually decided to do that, and it was a year-long program. So after I did that, I actually got my first job in HR, and I probably believe did that for about 2 years. And then I realized I wanted to invest more into the field. So I actually decided to go to grad school. So at the time in Canada, there wasn't a lot of sort of programs geared directly to human resources. So I ended up going to Rutgers University in the US, and I did my master in human resource management. And then after that, IBM hired me as a university hire. I spent 17 years with IBM performing various roles. And then I moved to Microsoft about 5 years ago as an HR business partner. And then my current role opened up and I applied, and here I am today sharing my learnings and experience through the pandemic and around hybrid work with you today.
Well, how long have you been in HR at Microsoft? From well
I've been
beyond.
there just over 5 years.
Okay, so well before the pandemic, right?
Oh,
When you
yes, yes. Yeah.
when you took this job, you probably thought you're going to be, dealing with hybrid work. You didn't think you'd be dealing with it while a pandemic raged, and everybody had to give it a shot, right?
Personally, it was actually a moment where I had to accept that I truly knew nothing at all about managing through this type of crisis, which essentially required us to really invent an entirely new operating model for the organization around how we were going to connect, in some places, how we were actually even going to perform our work. And all of this really had to be balanced with the demands that the pandemic was having on our personal lives. And for me, I was managing caring for my elderly mother. I had a daughter that was graduating from high school, and also I had to care for the employees at Microsoft. And it really had a significant toll on me personally. And I'd say there's a positive side of the pandemic, though, and it really changed the way that we look at mental health. It's now not a problem that someone else is dealing with. It's something that we were all dealing with. And I think work-life blend really has taken on a whole new meaning to Canadian workers. And I'd say in terms of sort of larger trends that we're now seeing around this, earlier this year, Microsoft released its second annual Work Trend Index. And what this is actually an in-depth report that from a study based on about 30,000 people in 31 different countries. And what the report found is that 73% of workers surveyed that they still want these flexible options to continue, while at the same time, 67% are craving more in-person times with their team. So in short, Linda, employees really want the best of both worlds, and they're really expecting employers to provide this for them. So I'd say in the next coming months, some of the biggest challenges for business leaders and HR leaders will really be around navigating these various policies, the logistics and dynamics around hybrid work that really makes the most sense for their organization specifically. Because I think obviously as individuals are different, organizations are also very different.
Well, let's talk about how this has evolved because over the last almost 2 years now, at least a year and a half, you've experimented, companies have experimented with different work styles, different hours. What's been your experience of that?
For me personally, I would say my productivity probably increased significantly, but it came at a huge expense to my physical and mental well-being. And I'd say essentially, Linda, I lost all my excuses to break away from work. So I'd say in the past, you'd say, I've got to get home to make dinner for my daughter, and then I have to take her to soccer. She was a competitive soccer player. Or I've got to go to a hockey game. And like most organizations, I feel like we've done, and other organizations have done, a really great job in really focusing on employee resiliency and reinforcing self-care. But I'd say in those moments, I realized the importance of leadership. And as leaders, we really needed to role model what I would say new excuses to break away from the work. So for me, I took up cooking balanced meals. I made a point of showing up on calls in my workout clothes. I also led with a lot of vulnerability and empathy. And I was really honest in sharing how I was coping and how I was doing, which really gave space to my team and our employees at Microsoft to do the same. Essentially, I was saying it's okay not to be okay. And I'd say as a result of these experiences, and when we think of this more broadly, I think today employees now want more control over where, when, and how they work. And they really expect businesses to be providing options. And I'd say the decisions we make as leaders today to really enable flexible work is really going to impact everything from culture and innovation to how we attract and retain talent. And we've personally seen feedback across the company about what's worked really well and what employees' needs are. And the HR team has really adapted really quickly to provide employees with different benefits and accommodations to best support them. And what I would say is technology has been an amazing enabler to help stay connected. And in fact, I would say I feel like more employees across the country are connecting more and actually turning on cameras, which really has supported engagement. And we're going to continue to learn from some of these practices that and learnings through the pandemic as we look forward to really build our hybrid work strategy.
The teleconferencing part of it's interesting because, as you say, it's amazing. We can talk to each other without being together. And yet, some people, a lot of people, have found it stressful because it's multiple hours a day with this. What's been your experience with the organization as regards, the number of hours of teleconferencing?
I would say again, what's been super, super critical is really around, as I said, technology is an amazing enabler, Linda, but it's really the behaviors and the practices of the organization that make a difference. So we've really had to focus on our managers and our leaders really leading from the front and helping our employees set boundaries. And these are simple things like just ensuring that our managers are cognizant about sending emails or IMs after hours, because if employees are seeing that, then employees are feeling that they also need to be on and stay connected. So we've done a lot of work on really around role modeling this need to set boundaries and really having our leaders really back that up.
Carolyn, do you think leaders appreciate the stress that workers have been under? And as we go forward, what are the things that leaders should be doing to help workers? Because we're not done with this yet.
No, absolutely not. And I would say now more than ever, people are expecting their employers and their leaders to really connect with them and understand their unique challenges. But business leaders may be a little out of touch, Linda, in our research, because what our research is telling us is Canadian workers are exhausted, but they're actually showing that business leaders are doing far better than their employees. And I think many employees, especially women, frontline workers, and those in newer in career, are far more overwhelmed than others. And I think the data tells us a few things, or a few things that we need to consider. So one, I'd say we really need to reevaluate what remote work looks like and how many hours employees are really online or active. Second, I think we need to increase manager coaching to really ensure that from the top down, employees are really given the space and opportunity to really thrive without burnout. And third, we really need to listen to our teams and really hear from them in real time what is working and what's not working. And again, I think this is really important point to make. Listening is so key during this time. And I would say this is a challenge for everyone. And it's an important time to really operate with what we call a growth mindset at Microsoft. Because I'm going to say no one leader or no one company is going to get this right. And everyone's needs are so different. So it's very important to really be listening, try new things and really learn along the way.
So when you look back at what workers have told you, what are the things that have gotten them through the pandemic, the things that have helped at Microsoft?
Oh gosh, I'd say the most important thing is that people are really the center of everything we do. And at Microsoft, we want all of our employees to really be grounded in what we believe drives productivity and innovation. And that is really wellness. And we often say at Microsoft that we want everyone to come to work as their best selves, meaning we truly want our employees to feel happy and healthy. And if they don't feel okay, we want to ensure that we've created a space and a culture where they can ask for help. So we are actually actively listening to and working with employees to continue to provide helpful resources, from formal benefit changes to manager coaching. And many of these changes we've made over the past year and a half to our employee benefit programs were actually the direct result of listening to employees' needs and feedback. So for example, we offered a 12-week paid pandemic leave for those that needed to care for children in families. We also extended our vacation policy, and we improved our employee benefits as it related to mental health resources. And all of this was really the steps that we were taking to ensure that our employees felt that they were cared for, but also that they had the right tools, not only to excel professionally, but also personally.
Let's talk about what comes next. You know, we have come up with this phrase, digital inclusion. I mean, we've had it before, but during the pandemic, it's come to light that everyone, whether they're hybrid or they're in the office environment, should be treated equally. How do you make that happen?
So this is so important because this is a big question that we're often asked, and a lot of individuals are sort of really looking at how can technology help. And I'd say absolutely technology plays a role, but this is when behavior becomes so critical. And I think when you're really intentional about inclusion, it can help take away some of the things like isolation that employees are feeling. And I think the pandemic has really changed many of us in a way. We've had to really think of new ways on how we're going to connect with our coworkers. And I say with limited hours in the day and so much work to be done, several of us compromise these social connections, which in fact are so incredibly important in the work that we do. So I'd say not only does these social connections make employees feel more connected, it's also so critical for your culture. And so you also need a place where employees can also come together and really have honest and open conversations. And I would say we know work is super social, and as much of the in-person atmosphere that we're actually missing right now is those moments when we actually bump into somebody and ask them about these weekends, their weekend, and just have that moment, that personal moment. And these social aspects can still be withheld in a virtual world as long as we're really intentional about creating space and time. So this is when, Linda, we talked about the role of leaders, and I'd say this is when it really does become incumbent upon managers to really assess workload of their teams, not only just freeing up time for employees to have balance, but also to build their social capital and really build their relationship with their peers. And these are these moments where, taking time out for a coffee chat, or just to read and comment on a Yammer or Teams post. So I think modeling behavior is just really a great example where managers can really demonstrate that it's okay to take time out to connect with peers, and really just simply ask what someone's doing. And we've seen the same effects around setting boundaries, or blocking time for lunch. So I think when we're role modeling these behaviors, this is when really we can really bring inclusion back into our organizations, but it has to be intentional.
So do you think you can create the corporate culture you want, the one you were working on before the pandemic, and at the same time really accommodate this hybrid environment, which isn't going anywhere?
I absolutely do believe that we can still achieve this. And I think when and a lot of people ask, well, how do you do this? And I think we talk about the new operating model, right? And I think it has to do with people, it has to do with technology, and it has to do with processes. And they are all so connected. So I think organizations have to really take a good hard look at your culture. You have to look at what technology, what you have in place, and sort of what the spaces that you have, and really make sure there's a balance across all three of these. So I'd say this is when the partnership with your real estate team, with IT, with finance, is going to become so critical, because you really have to look at this as sort of a three in the box type approach.
So as a manager, what are the things you should be thinking about right now?
I would say, Linda, managers are the bridge between leadership's vision and the hard realities of the front line. Also, managers reinforce culture, like setting norms of working hours. They also play such a key role in career development and support. And so I'd say knowing that employees are overwhelmed, it's really incumbent upon managers and leaders to really help find solutions for their team. It could be as simple as asking some feedback, and really just having honest conversations, or really blocking time in calendars. And all this stuff might seem small or simple, but it's these little moments of care that really reinforce your culture. And a very interesting fact here at Microsoft is, back in 2019, we actually introduced a new manager framework, or manager expectations. And these are very, very simple. They are model, coach, and care. And a lot of times we all recognize, obviously, that a manager's role takes on far more than these three aspects of work. However, what we believe at Microsoft is that if a manager is focused on these three elements, they're going to have a significant impact on the employee's day-to-day experience.
Carolyn, thank you so much for talking to me today.
Thank you, Linda.
Carolyn Byers, HR lead at Microsoft Canada.